Hey, you guys are from the Wasteland trying to see if this is working. I may have to, maybe having some video problems. Let me know if you can see me. If not, I will have to leave and come back in a second. I'm not seeing any image, so let me know if you guys see anything. If not, I will get off and briefly and come back on. Okay, just a second. Trying a new camera and it's supposed to be better, but it doesn't appear to be working at all, which means it's not better, is it? You guys see that? Right now I look crooked. Is that even better? It doesn't even look better. This looks worse to me. What do you guys think? Does it look better or worse? 'Cause at least it's working. We have video, but I'm not sure if it looks better or not. All right, cool. At least it'll work. How you doing, guys? Sorry I was out last week. I had some friends in town. Couldn't make it back into the studio. That's what this is. This is fresh studio equipment here. But audio's working, video's working, so we'll get started. Lots of stuff has been going crazy last couple weeks. Um, like I was telling one of my friends, I'm probably the most grumpy person in the world whose worth has effectively doubled in the last 2 years, mainly because of this stuff. And it's because I don't have any freaking money to begin with. So doubling isn't really that important. But how long have I been on here talking to everybody about gold and silver? 10 years, 15 years? I've seen a lot of ups and downs in that time frame, and it seems to be like we might be heading into the big one. Now, before you guys take that the wrong way. I am, of course, not expecting this to be the end of gold and silver prices, but knowing that this was coming and wanting to have been buying massive quantities of gold and silver this entire time, I'm a little bit grumpy that I have such what I consider a paltry stash for someone who knew that this was coming. And now it's even more, even though I do think it's pretty much inevitable that it'll double or more from here, it is pretty annoying that a year or two ago silver was 23, 25 bucks. Um, Same with gold, so almost half price or whatever, 50% less. And to have been able to acquire so little in that time frame based on how much I would want to, that it's frustrating. It's like knowing that a certain number is going to come up on roulette somehow. You had a vision, and you're like, it's going to be Black 13. I need money, and you like scrape it together as much as possible. You got like $3, you throw it down there, and it's like Black 13. You now have $6. Woo! When you could have made like generational, and I still think that's happening, but like I said, it means that you have to get more and more fiat to get an equal amount, twice as much now, twice as much to get the same amount that you could have a measly 2 years ago. And we may only see it increase from here with the degradation of our currency. So by no means am I saying I think this is the end of the rise in gold and silver prices, because for that to be the case, I would have to say that it's the end of the disintegration of our fiat currency, which that's not going to happen. As Peter Schiff once said, the idea that over the long term or in any significant way, the value of this thing that they print endless quantities of backed by nothing is going to be increase. That's a pretty bold prediction to make. And sure, there will be fluctuations, mainly as it relates to other currencies and other demand related events. Like all these currencies are falling. I had a garage sale and I got a lot of like extra crispy $1 bills. But I thought people would be giving me like weird hairy change, but they had like brand new $1 bills. Nobody uses cash anymore. So any money that they do have is like brand new. They had to pull it out of the ATM or something just to go garage sailing. But yeah, so that's obviously the forefront of my mind. Gold and silver going through the roof. Last I checked, silver was like $46 or something. 46.62, gold at 3,800. So gold officially at all-time highs, I believe, right? Yeah. Silver approaching all-time highs and effective all-time highs if you take out the basically silver squeeze of the Hunt brothers and whatnot. Um, I think we approached 50 bucks in 2011 as well, right? So it's approaching that like what I would consider the real all-time high. and I don't see any bottom. Like, yeah, we could see some pullbacks as it gets through these weird psychological levels, like $50. Maybe some people will sell off just thinking that's the end. But I really don't see that happening in any significant way. Just nothing goes straight up. Even the value of our currency doesn't go straight down, but it just continues its downward plod. Silver and gold continue their upward skyrocket trajectory. And other than that, of course, the weirdest news is this giant meeting of all the generals from Pete Hegseth, Department of Secretary of the Department of War, and yeah, that's interesting. What do you guys think about that? I posted on Twitter talking with Canadian Pepper and a few other people that to me, I don't buy that this is an operational thing. It doesn't make sense to me. There's no operational reason that you would have no likely to me operational reason. Obviously, you can come up with some theoretical reasons why you would need to physically pull all these generals from all around the world to physically meet in one place. Um, I don't think it's operational. I think that means it's about them. Like there is a reason he wants these people in the room. It's possible. I think there's probably a 25% chance it really is just what it said on face value that they're just being goofy and wanting a in face pep rally slash come to Jesus meeting slash we're letting a bunch of you go slash this is how it goes from now on. Make sure people are in lockstep and saying you're not going to be doing all this social media stuff in defiance of the administration and your chain of command and all that. Certainly possible. I think that the risk that they're taking by doing that, the military risk, like the tactical risk of having all the um generals in one place at one time is overblown by some people, like the way Canadian Prepper and some other people were talking about, like, I can't believe they're taking this massive risk. Someone could just take them all out at once. And like, okay, that would be equivalent to saying that Russia and China and Iran or whatever could just nuke us at any given point, which is absolutely true. At any point, they could just launch a nuke over here. And that would be the equivalent level of escalation if they did any sort of attack that missile or otherwise, it targeted a room full of 600, a building full of 600 generals. And so thinking that that's a likelihood is extremely far-fetched because it's basically the equivalent of saying we're instantly going into nuclear war with whatever country did that. To the extent that they even could do that without like America's in a unique position. We're so separated. They would have to have somebody already here, already set up strategically with that sort of equipment and bombs to plan this operation on an FBI military base and pull that off within like a week's notice or something, or they would have to launch an intercontinental ballistic missile, which we would see coming and know who did it. So I think the risk of like, because all these guys are fucking useless anyway, they're all politicians. It would probably improve military functionality to lose every single general that's out there. It's not like it would decapitation strikes in that sense really do anything. Like, yes, they are decision makers, but at the actual logistical operational level, there's plenty of other full bird colonels, lieutenant colonels, captains, majors, and everything else taking care of all the operations. It's not like those any of these units would be standing around being like, we're useless now that this, fat two-star general is taken out. That doesn't really make sense to me. So it would be a tremendous, instantaneous nuclear war level escalation, exactly similar to just nuking a major city or something without any real long-term decrease in the effectiveness of the military. So I really think and it would be difficult. Like I said, it would take a huge operation or a sovereign state level strike from continents away that can only be done by probably two or three countries in the world anyway. And we would know who did it and we would have enough notice to probably evacuate the place anyway. You'd have like 30 minutes of notice for like an ICBM or something. So I don't think that that's a really huge risk. So I do definitely think that it's something that they would risk just to do a pep rally or a come to Jesus meeting. Another thing that I've heard is that it may have also been Canadian Prepper who floated this theory, and albeit it was a theory, that the whatever we would normally use, whatever systems we would normally use with um to communicate top secret information to these generals has been compromised. And so you're pulling them all into, I mean, that would just be an insane failure and one that wouldn't be remedied by simply bringing everyone in to tell them something. Like if your complete system of transmitting classified information to your military units around the globe has been compromised, you're not going to launch an operation to begin with, and you're certainly not going to do it just by flying everyone and telling them what to do and then flying them back out, because you're not going to be able to prosecute or continue that operation without a effective communications method in place. You would just give them one op order for World War III and then send them back on their way without being able to transmit any more classified information. Absolutely, like a super unrealistic scenario in my mind that we've just lost this, because that would be the mission would just be fix or create a different classified information communications channels, and you wouldn't need them to be there in person to do that, and it wouldn't be the generals coming up with that. It would be some tech nerds or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Like HTTP says, if our private communications with our military units, especially generals, has been compromised, exactly, we've already lost by a huge margin, and we wouldn't fix that by just getting all these guys in one place. The most hilarious theory, which I hope is true, is that and someone just floated this as a recommendation, not that they think that this would ever happen, but saying what he should do is that Hegseth should administer a PT test to all the flag and general officer corps. That would be hilarious because none of them would pass, and it would be brutally embarrassing to them, and it would give them a hilarious reason to just fire everybody because they can't do like a single push up, can't even walk the mile on a profiles and all this other stuff. So that would be hilarious. Have them all show up and then just be like, all right, having PTs there and be like, all right, here you go. We're doing a PT test. So I really, really hope that's the case. The only operational reason that I can think, and it still doesn't really require them being physically in person, except and unless this is about some sort of domestic operation, which would kind of be conspiratorial, but it is at least possible the pieces would match up. We're seeing National Guard deployed to all these major cities like Chicago, Portland, Memphis area, DC, and other states for this crime, which isn't really worse than it was 6 or 8 months ago. It's certainly bad enough in a lot of these places to morally justify that kind of action, but I really don't think it's the real reason. I think that's a cover for at least a concern about potential domestic issues. So if maybe all the Q-tards are right, and we've seen Comey, I would have even bet that Comey was never even going to get arrested. Super happy about that. I've been saying I'll believe it when I see it when it comes to anybody getting arrested. I still don't believe anyone like Obama or anything like that is going to get arrested, but I have to at least admit and happily admit that I was wrong. That at least they got somebody, or planning to. He hasn't actually been arrested yet. He has till like October 9th to turn himself in. But if we go down this conspiratorial chain of or train of thought, that is a potential reason to bring them all back in if they know that we're going to have to do a widespread arrest spree of people who are in all levels of government and law enforcement and potentially military. Some of these guys may be ones who would need to be arrested, have them all in one place and find out for sure, do a real come to Jesus meeting about this is what's about to happen. First of all, you arrest these guys. We need to know exactly right now who's on our side, kind of cut off any mutiny before we kind of purge the government of all these people who did heinously illegal things over the past, 4, 5, 6, 8 years. But specifically throughout the Biden administration, like literal treasonous things. Like some of these generals openly admitted that they went behind the administration's back to communicate with foreign powers. Tons of people who lied under oath and just defied orders and stuff like that. So like absolutely cut and dried illegal activity, borderline or even overtly treasonous activity that would be absolutely justified. And in fact, in my opinion, it's morally imperative to arrest and punish some of these people, at least if nothing else within the US UCMJ, if not broader criminal charges. So that could be a potential operational reason. It's a domestic operation. They know everyone in these cities is going to completely like chimp out, and they have to have National Guard there. They have to make sure that all these high level military leaders are not going to try to defy the administration, that sort of thing. That's a potential reason, but that's really kind of low likelihood in my mind. But it is a possibility. I really do think it's just probably at least 75% chance, I would say, that it is a pep rally / partial purge / come to Jesus meeting for all these things. But I'm going to read some comments here before we get into any further. Sorry, I had some issues with the video in the beginning. If you guys are watching now, this is a different camera. Let me know if you think it's better. I can already tell it might have some focus issues. because it can actually focus, which is good for some things, worse if it starts to freak out. But did I just lose video? Let me know if the video is still working again and we have audio, because it just froze up on me on my end. So let me know if we lost video. What a pain in my ass. So much for a new camera if it can't even. Yeah, looks like it. We definitely froze up video. Let me know if you can at least see it. Anyone? This video froze on your end? Let me know if you can hear audio or if the whole thing went down. Freeze. All right. Yeah. Let me see if I can unplug this thing. You can still hear me, then we're still on here. I just got to try to get the camera working. So hang tight. We're going to try to get this going. There we go. We're working again. Should be working. I won't try to make it focus because it seems prone to freezing up. Um, let's go back through the comments. Organization. Here we go. We're close to economic class to anything other than hard assets like beans, bullets, and band-aids. Yeah, I consider this amongst those things as well. SPQR. I think when the US gets its own crypto, the pressure will be on Bitcoin. Let's go. Yes, much ado about nothing. Yeah, I think so. I think it's most likely just, like I said, come to Jesus meeting / pep rally. The administration loves to do big, bombastic, high optic things like that. It does not surprise me in the least. But we have to also, at the same time, recognize how unprecedented this is and how much it could be something dramatic. I think the most likelihood of it being something ominous or operational is if it is a domestic operation of some kind. If they know something is going to happen with, politically or economically that could cause a lot of unrest in the United States, and they got to coalesce resources here, make sure everyone in the military is on So it's not going to be something World War III related in my mind. That's only like a 10% chance. I think a 75 or, let's say 70% chance is 70-75% chance is what it is at face value, what people are reporting that it is. And then the other remaining percentage, 15, 20, whatever it is something domestic that they're at least worried about. Not that means they're going to happen, but that could happen. So that's my assessment. Organizational restructure, overview, things like that. Plot twist, the generals come home and the troops follow shortly after. Right, that would be fantastic. Bring everybody home. That's what should happen. Pioneer Keir Starmer just mandated digital ID or he can't work in England. Is that official? I knew they were introducing it, but I thought it had to be like voted on or something. Is that officially in? Terrible. Why has Prepper YouTube changed to reporting, regurgitating current news, current events? What happened to you and other old school Prepper channels doing video responses to each other? Honestly, most of that is related to what YouTube and even the audience responds to. Like you can put it takes easy to into a enjoyable to talk about and see what people actually click on. We can talk all day about how much more important it is for videos about actual prepping related topics. But when YouTube doesn't prioritize that, and apparently the audience doesn't prioritize that, and it takes 3 to 10 times as much effort, maybe more, to create those videos, to edit them, all that, it makes sense. I mean, I know why. People generally do what you pay them to do, whether that's in money, attention, or whatever. And that's what YouTube and people pay for by a huge margin. It's just the informational kind of daily, like very consistent informational videos versus slightly fewer, really high quality, high effort, instructional and everything. It's just the way it is. Unfortunate, but and I already dealt with that comment that if our communication with generals has been compromised, we've already lost. Absolutely true. I need to buy a good helmet. Any recommendations? I am not a helmet guy in terms of my expertise. I will say that I wouldn't trust a lot of those Chinese like claims to ballistic protection, like level 4 and everything. I would try to get something that is made in the US official, and then it just comes down to preference. Do you want like the higher ear cut? Are you going to be wearing it with body armor for what type of movement and shape you need? Are you going to be putting nods and other things on it? If you just want protection, you could even get some of the older Kevlar helmets that we had. and they still should offer pretty good ballistic protection. Just won't have that same high cut for like ear pro and all that other nonsense and nods and whatever. So it depends on what you're into. Canadian prepper has malignant PTSD. Literally everything is a threat and has apocalyptic potential and needs to speak to a professional. I've said that before, and that's one of the reasons I'm not a hater, is because I genuinely think he does believe everything he's putting on there about how serious of a situation he thinks we're in, how dire he thinks it is. I am not quite as pessimistic specifically with relating to like war, that I think we're like absolutely guaranteed going to have major nuclear in a World War III. I think it's pretty evident that things are continuing to escalate. I think that economic issues will kind of counteract that in a big way. And even if it doesn't, I don't see that being something that we have actual high chance of feeling the pain too badly in a direct way in the US. We'll feel it hugely in an economic way, cost of goods, shortages, you know what I mean? But even if we go to like actual direct NATO war with Russia or China, it's still pretty, it's still a minority chance that there will be like ballistic missiles launched into the United States. The threat of terrorism go up, things like that. But the fact that we will be like directly attacked by these other nations in the continental US is probably pretty low, even in a legit World War III scenario. It would go way up and it might happen isolated incidents, but I think that the difficulty of actually prosecuting a major war like that logistically will prevent it from getting too bad. We won't be able to do it. Our prepping channel's a dying breed. Everyone is afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing. I don't even know if that's it, because like I said, people will talk about all this stuff, and it's actually doing the daily news videos is actually puts you much more at risk of running afoul of doing or saying the wrong thing than doing actual prepping videos like a channel. Like one of the channels I've always talked about that does actual prepping content, and since I've mentioned them, has gone from like 20,000 subscribers up to I think a couple 100,000 subscribers, is the Provident Preppers. They just do actual prepping videos for the most part on like real prepping topics. And you're much safer doing that, talking about how to store rice correctly, than you are talking about current events. So I don't think it's a cowardice issue in any means. I did some deep digging and no longer believe nukes are real at all. Far out, I know, but that's what my research led me. Another big old dupe. I've heard that. I don't buy into that yet. I mean, I don't see any compelling evidence that nukes don't exist. What happens if one day all of the shelves at every single grocery store are completely empty? You cannot withdraw or deposit money out of the bank. Well, shit hit the fan happens. That's what happens. Mad Max. A level 4 helmets that cover the ears online if you do some searching about 150. That seems cheap. Those are those ones that I would not trust. If you get a helmet for 150 bucks, I would not trust that it has real level 4 ballistic protection. Remember, level 4 is like 30-06 steel core right to the dome, and it's not going to go through. I don't know. There is no gas at gas stations. Communications stop. Transportation ceases to exist. Supply chains come to a screeching. Yeah, exactly. It's Walking Dead for sure. If all those things happen at once. Maybe not now, but I wasn't that way back then. The fact more controversial stuff is talked about now versus back then. Yeah, it's gotten better. There was a dark period around COVID and everything where you couldn't talk about anything. But I really don't think it's content related. The fact that YouTube is, because the ones that do the daily, talking head news videos, just rehashing current events, they get a lot more views than if you actually make real prepping content. So I don't think it's about the content, because I really don't think YouTube would rather have you being Alex Jones than talking how to store rice. I think it's just they vastly seem to prefer, and to a solid extent, the audience will actually click on and watch more often the videos where you're talking about current events with clickbaity titles, and it is what it is. And I know that doesn't speak to all of you guys, but the ones who were like, that's not true, I'd much rather see real prepping videos, you are a minority, unfortunately. There's a lot more of the normies, or even like quasi preppers, or people who just want the clickbait and want to watch the videos about current events. And I do think it's important to get that information out there. And it's unfortunate that that gets so much more results. And then YouTube also does prioritize constant content like every day, they will like tank your channel if you just do like semi-frequent videos compared to you doing every day. You get so much more sharing and promoting, and keep in mind, like, most of your views as a channel come from videos that are like recommended, not from your actual subscriber base. Subscribers only watch a small percentage of your videos anyway, anytime it goes up there. So you really need it to be promoted by YouTube, and they promote the channels that make constant, like almost daily or more content. And it's extremely difficult to do that, especially if YouTube is not your full-time job. It's almost impossible to do any sort of long form informational video that requires setting things up, doing editing, and do it on a daily basis. And then YouTube highly prioritizes the channel. That's why my channel has floundered so badly over the years, is because I've never been able to do just like 4 or 5 or more videos a week. And that's what YouTube rewards by a huge margin. 7 Days in May comes to mind. Good time to learn foraging and get a decent library of hard copy and foraging book for sure. Tell your normie friends that 30 days is the new prepping standard. 3 days is old news. They need to get with it. Yeah, 3 days. I mean, I never really thought that was a very good standard, because like anything that you could get through without doing anything anyway is probably not a decent benchmark for considering yourself prepared for anything. Like, for 3 days, you don't even, most people would survive not even drinking water. I don't recommend it, but that's usually what people say, 3 days without water. So like, if you even have like a couple liters of water sitting around, gallon or two of water per person, you can easily survive 3 days. You don't even need to eat. You don't even need to have electricity or anything, unless you're in a harsh environment. You don't need fuel unless you're in a pretty bad wintry place. So really, a couple weeks is like the bare minimum for what anything that I would consider preparedness, is to deal with like a week long or more, grid down scenario. If you can't deal with that, you don't really have preps. You just have stuff. Like having 3 days worth of food is just having food. Like, do you go into the grocery store every day? No, then you should always have a couple days worth of food. And even if you don't, nothing's going to happen in 3 days as long as you have a little bit of water. So 3 days was never, it was always, rookie numbers. Not even rookie. It's not even getting started. You can, just buy a 20-pound bag of rice for $14 or whatever it is nowadays, is like weeks worth of calories for one person. So like 3 days was such a joke for anything. You could literally fit 3 days of supplies like in one backpack. Vegas Backyard Prepper says, "Hey, finally caught one of your streams. Awesome, glad you could make it." If you didn't know, me and Vegas Backyard Prepper met when Urban Prepper came into town up from Seattle. We did a meetup here out at the on the Strip Fashion Show Mall. SBQR says, unpopular opinion, non-SHTF everyday preparedness is a better investment of time than going all in for unlikely catastrophic scenarios. I agree, and that's always what I've said, because if you really are talking about like truly catastrophic, total grid down in most of the country for weeks or months at a time, then you have to set up a system that would require total lifestyle change now. You can't, it's because even people who have like homesteads and hobby farms and everything else, that's not enough for that scenario. You need like a compound with like dozens of people on it to have any reasonable chance of most of the people in your group surviving in such a scenario. And luckily, I think major scenarios like that are unlikely, or I would be trying to do that if I thought that was likely. It's definitely possible, but something like that has never really happened in a massively widespread way in modern human history. So I don't think it's worth it for most of us to change our entire lifestyles for that and sacrifice preparing for much more likely scenarios. I think very likely scenarios, and what we have seen throughout human history all the time, is instances of conflict, localized conflict and war, localized loss of resources and grid down events, tons of economic disturbances and catastrophic economic times all over the world. That's pretty much inevitable to happen at some point. So those are the things that I think you should prepare for. And luckily, due to the commonality of preparedness, anything you do for those things still makes you more likely to survive if we were to encounter one of these insane grid down events. But if it really goes true countrywide grid down, having a few chickens and stuff doesn't really make a tremendous difference versus someone who just is in an apartment with 2 years of food stored directly. you're still in the same situation where you are needing to go to the store for something. You still just have supplies stored, whether it's chicken food or your own food or whatever. And I've talked about that before. So to truly prepare for a what all of us would consider a real Mad Max screwed down scenario, you have to have a massive lifestyle change, a large group, that sort of thing, almost like Amish level subsistence living, already set up ahead of time with dozens of people. And you can do that, but that requires a total lifestyle change. If you have a Baofeng radio with airband, listen to the aeronautical notifications frequency, planes above your location. You can hear planes pilots chat. Cool. How high is silver going to get? Both times at 50, I sold half and bought it back after it dropped. Yeah, I sold the first time when it got up like in the high 40s. I almost nailed the top. And that was because I could tell at the time that that wasn't related to an impending demise of the currency. I wasn't sure exactly what was going on with it, but it wasn't because the dollar was about to die or not become the reserve currency within the next couple of years at that point. So I actually sold quite a bit at the top too. It was beautiful. That doesn't feel like what's going on right now. I don't see any reason why what's caused silver to go from 25 to 45 now is in any likelihood of changing. In fact, all those things are getting worse all around the world. We have the added threat of like World War III scenarios, which is causing people all over the globe to buy gold and silver. Central banks are buying it. We're seeing issues with the COMEX, all sorts of issues with the banking system, stock market about to roll over. Speaking of which, in the event that anything does happen in the Monday or Tuesday timeframe, and even if it doesn't specifically happen on Tuesday, I think there's a super high likelihood of some pretty gnarly perturbations in the markets in the next 2 or 3 months. So I'm making a cheeky little options bet on some Nvidia puts, which I'm not. This is not financial advice because I'm stupid and I'm poor, so you shouldn't do what I say. But I'm just thinking it's very possible. I don't want to say likely, but it's very possible in my mind that we're going to see some market dip significantly in the next few months, and it could happen as early as this week if something weird does come out of this meeting or anything else happens. So I bought like 90-day puts on Nvidia because of all the companies in the market, that is one of the most bloated and probably most likely to suffer dramatically based on anybody losing faith in the markets because it's all based on sentiment. They don't really have the productivity and the earnings there to justify their insane valuations and the same stock price. So everything, if the stock market loses any of that momentum, it's going to come mostly from these companies that have been buoying it up. And it's like 5 to 10 companies max, that being one of the most dramatic of them. So I bought puts for like, I think it was like $120 for like 90 days out. So for a few $100s, you can get like 3 or 4. They were like 90 cents, I think, so $90 a contract for 100 of them for like $120 puts for like 90 days out. And highly likelihood chance of losing that $300. But if we were to see significant dip in the market in that time frame, then that could be a nice little windfall. Did I think freeze again? Tell me if I froze again, because on my end it looks a little frozen. This camera is we're definitely gonna have to go back to my other one because this thing is just not wanting to work. Not wanting to work. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. So bear with me. We're going to jump back onto this thing. I don't know what's going on with that. Definitely taking some more tweaking. All right. SPQR says fatties can live on about 1 pound of fat per day. 200 plus weight equals 200 days of calories. Yeah, you guys have heard me talking about this thing froze again. All right, I'm probably gonna have to cut this one short, guys, because we are not equipped emotionally to deal with all these technical issues. So give me just 1 second. I'll try to hook up my old one. Give me like 5 seconds. Just a second, guys. If you guys are listening, I am still trying to hook up my old camera. Let's see where we got it. Got it, got it, got it. You can still see it. That experiment has come to an end. Sorry. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that one. Might need to restart my computer and everything. Yeah, it seems to freeze every time it's trying to focus, which is annoying. And this one still looks fine for now. I was trying to get a camera that would probably look better for like doing interviews and stuff, but this one is honestly looks okay. Oh yeah, you saw my floor. OPSEC fail. All right, so where was I? We're reading a comment. Said fatties can live on about 1 pound of fat per day, 200 plus. Yeah, I've talked before on this channel a lot about Angus Burberry, guy in the 70s who was, morbidly obese and decided he'd had enough and realized that all you have to do to fix obesity is nothing. And he stopped eating, just did nothing. And he went for over 380 days with no food, just some vitamins, some black coffee, and he lost about, because that's literally why you get fat, why humans and other animals get fat, store body fat, is to have fuel that your body can use in the future. And he had stored 380 days worth of calories on his body, and he lost about 12 ounces a day, which makes perfect sense when you factor in the knowledge that a pound of fat has about 3,500 calories. So he was doing about 3/4 of a pound of fat. So that is about 2,400 calories, right? Somewhere in that range a day off the fat that was already in his body. So he wasn't starving. He was eating fat every day. It was just happened to be fat that his body had already stored ahead of time. So that goes back to the 3-day storage of food. It's rare the person who doesn't have 3 days worth of fat stored on their body. It'd be uncomfortable for people who are not used to it. I mentioned when I did a 72-hour fast uh last year or a year before that, I don't remember exactly when, that was the longest I'd ever gone without food. I wasn't sure if I'd ever even gone more than 24 hours before that, without eating anything. And I wanted to see what it felt like and such things. And so I did a 72-hour fast. Uncomfortable. Once I got around the 36-hour mark was when it felt the worst. After that, it was not nearly as bad. I didn't have any more hunger pangs and stuff. But yeah, 72-hour preps, don't waste your time. I want to see at least 2 weeks. 2 weeks is pretty damn easy for people to get 2 weeks worth of food, water, and a small amount of either electricity or fuel and all your medicine, that sort of thing. 2 weeks, easy, and should be a bare minimum for most people. That would still fit in a couple totes or a portion of a closet. Um, Easy. Like I said, one 20-pound bag of rice is more than enough in terms of pure calories. Now, probably not going to want to eat only rice, but my point is that it's not that hard. Get some cans of Stag chili. 3 cans of Stag chili is 1,800, over 1,800 calories. That's enough for a day for most people to not be in danger of, significant weight loss. And then you add in a few other things like maybe some snackage, granola bars, add some rice to your chili. Very easy to hit those, not too expensive. And you're, like I said, you're talking about a tote per person is enough, minus maybe the water. But for food and supplies, one large tote could probably be 2 weeks of supplies for most people per person. Yeah, the camera failed once more. What a joke, right? You can see the floor. Like I said, the corned beef hash is also awesome. Very good terms. It's kind of like the spam and everything, and only the things with meat are really going to get you that high calorie count in canned goods. So the chilies, specifically Chag, Stilly, or Rado, is the goat of the chilies. Spam, 1,000 calories almost. No carbs though. The corned beef hash has the potatoes in it, so it is also carbs. So it's kind of like the chili. You get protein, fat, and carbs. The most expensive of those three things, though, between the Stag chili being the cheapest, spam being next usually, especially if you get generic spam, corned beef hash is very expensive, but it is great, specifically if you want to add it to like a scramble, put in some of your dehydrated eggs or your fresh eggs if you do have the chickens. And like I said, nothing that I said earlier should be taken to mean that it's not a hugely awesome thing and a great preparedness benefit to have chickens. But I was just saying that doesn't necessarily make you any better prepared for a truly disastrous grid down scenario. Kraut with mustard with baked beans. Kraut doesn't have any calories, though. It's just cabbage, but it might taste good. Good combo to berry if you get it below the frost line. Interesting. Idea just came to me earlier tonight. Four Patriots is doing buy 3 months, get 2 months free. I have talked about that before. I don't like Four Patriots. I think it's not good quality stuff. I looked at some of their ingredients for some of their things, and this is absolute garbage. I think they do the cheapest possible stuff they can and spend all their money on advertising. But it's calories, you know? Yeah. It's all GMO, all seed oils, preservatives, that sort of shit. Um, Freeze-dried food is fantastic if you can afford it. If not, I recommend just storing your own to save money. If not, go with one of the more reputable, higher quality ones than Four Patriots. There's plenty out there. CLM says I vacuum seal loads of honey, roasted peanuts, delicious. And most of that stuff, if you cycle through it, pretty decent shelf life. Canned goods, as we've talked about before, has an almost indefinite shelf life. If you don't breach the seal, you don't have to worry about them really going bad. Or at least not in a dangerous way. It might become slightly tasteless or mushy if we're talking decades later. But like I've eaten canned foods that were 8 or 9 years past the expiration, so probably 10 or 12 years old. And I don't think I would have noticed if I didn't know ahead of time that I was eating that. So I'm not at all worried about that, but you still cycle it out. But the dehydrated stuff, or not dehydrated, freeze dried is the best for true long-term storage. It's just not cheap. So let me know, what do you guys think is going to happen on, let me get a vote. Just chime in the chat if you don't mind, what you think is going to happen on Tuesday with this meeting with Hegseth. My money is on it being what they really say at face value, of it being some kind of a pep rally. And then, like I said, I think that more along the lines of them being a come to Jesus meeting, letting some of them know that they're going to drastically reduce the number of, the general officer and flag corps level officers. We don't need 600 or 800 brigadier generals and above, which is apparently who's coming to this meeting. There's just no reason to have that. Just like anything else in the government, administrative bloat has gotten absurd in the past, 20, 25 years. Right, and to let them know that there's some of them who have probably already crossed the line in terms of treasonous activity, and the rest are going to get to come to Jesus meeting of, you're not going to get on Twitter and your social media and say things that are embarrassing or contradictory or defiant to the regime, and you're either already gone or this is your last warning kind of thing, and like he wants us to look into their eyes when he says it, and that's what I think is happening. And like I said, I think there's about a 10 or 15 or maybe 15 or 20% chance of it being a domestic issue that they're trying to head off. And then 5 or 10% chance of it being actually related to some sort of major foreign military operation, whether that's ours or someone else. It could be, something that we're involved with NATO, and either it could even be NATO's planning on attacking Russia and we're not going to get involved, and just letting them know, that sort of thing, something like that. But I think it's 5 to 10% chance of a foreign actual major military operation. 10 to 20% chance of a domestic operation / event of some kind, and then the vast majority of the chance being that it's just a HR meeting to bust up there and chastise and get control of the higher level brass. And like I said, because it just doesn't make sense. None of the actual operational issues, if it were a real operational issue, anything from World War III to certainly anything foreign, would require or even be a good idea to require an in-person meeting. And the idea that there's a complete compromising or failure of the communication, the classified communication system would just be like such a hamstringing of the entire forces. There's no way you would do an operation if that was the case until you fixed it. You just couldn't. So the idea that it would be like, well, we can't trust our entire classified communications network, so we're going to get everybody here and talk to them in person and then go say, okay, go do World War III now. Zero chance of that. Zero chance in my mind. that it's because our communication system is compromised. It just doesn't make any sense. And so I don't think that makes any sense at all. Um, but yeah, so I'm not expecting anything other than maybe a public meltdown by the media when 100 generals are fired or something like that, and maybe a handful get arrested or something is probably the most dramatic I actually expect to see. But I look at what could happen, not what I necessarily think is going to happen, and I've assigned what I think are the proper likelihoods to those events. Which honestly, like I said, I still would put the event of this being some kind of actual military operation. I still put it at anywhere from 20 or 15 to 20%, 10 to 20%, somewhere in that range. I don't remember the numbers I threw out before. Can't expect me to remember everything I say, but you know what I mean. Like, I'm still saying that there is a solid chance of this being actually something happening, but I think it's a very minority chance given all the possible scenarios. So, but that's why I think that regardless of what happens, whether it's something related to this or just whatever we might see anyway, with everything that's going on in the banking systems and the reverse repo market and the COMEX and the currency and World War III, there's even Tuesday aside, there's still a good chance of something going crazy with the markets, which is why I put in those NVIDIA puts. And if you want to do something similar, Monday probably wouldn't be a bad idea. But like I said, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm stupid and poor. So you don't want to do what I do. But just putting that out there, let you know, I'd let you guys know what I'm not Nancy Pelosi over here, all right? I tell you guys what we're doing. I don't have any advanced knowledge. Peak refuel is better, but dollars, yeah, all that stuff is exactly like Mountain House, Peak Refuel, whatever the one that I think it's just called Dehydrated something that Canadian Prepper has. Like those seem like legit from what I can tell. There's even some of the other companies like I think Legacy Foods is decent. They have good stuff. They don't have a lot of like meat in there, and some of them did mixed dishes, so I would check that. But and some of the major just long-term food storage brands are fine. And you can also get, if you're going to do a lot of freeze-dried food, like if you're going to buy thousands of dollars worth, in most cases, it would make sense to buy a harvest rate freeze dryer and do it yourself. If you're going to spend more, like what does one of those units cost? $3,000? If you're going to spend that much on freeze-dried food or more, then you might as well just do that, because for the same amount of money, you will get 5 times as much actual freeze-dried food. So if you're going to spend $3,000 or $4,000 on freeze-dried food anyway, get that and make it yourself. Because when you factor in like the Mylar bags and everything, I'd put it like $4,000. You will get 3 or 4, 5 times as much actual food stored for that $4,000 if you're freeze drying it yourself. Mr. Landfill says, I've been prepping since Y2K and have never regretted it. Likewise, I do regret not going absolutely 100% ham on putting every dollar I've ever made into gold and silver, but I've done it with most of the money that I have. So I really could have done much more, honestly. Keenan Grace is a great YouTuber who has awesome investment advice. All right, I'll check it out. I guess if you like rats, then go for it. Go for what? Hardwood, honestly, I'd rather eat the trees. They also count packets of white rice as meals, which lasts 10 to 15 years in a sandwich bag. Who is that referencing? Oh, hardworking American. Oh, he said better than eating Four Patriots is not ideal, but better than eating a Cambrian layer of my pine trees. Yeah, but I mean, just store your own then. Put a little bit of effort in. I would literally much rather have remember when I made that video? Some of you may not have seen it a year or two ago. I did the $120 1 month supply of food, which is a bag of rice and however many cans of Spam you get with the rest of the money. And I would much rather get that. And the best thing you can do, in my mind, for taste is add some dehydrated eggs, which are very expensive now. But and then you make like a version of like fried rice with the rice, Spam, and eggs. Very good. I love that. I would much rather have Spam and rice or rice and stag chili than Four Patriots crap for sure. And it'd probably be cheaper, last just as long, especially if you store it yourself. If you do freeze dried, you'll need a water source too, or it's all moot. Correct, but you need a water source anyway. You will need more if you have to reconstitute all your food. But I mean, we're assuming that if you're planning on being prepared for weeks or months, you have to have weeks and months worth of water anyway. So if you have to add maybe 25% more water to rehydrate all your meals, then yeah, then so be it. But water is something you have to figure out anyway. And a lot of people live where water collection is not an issue at all. You know, if you're in Florida or Minnesota or Michigan or pretty much anywhere on the East Coast, collecting water is not really the biggest of problems. All you have to do is worry about filtering it or purifying it. Out here, Arizona, Vegas, California, stuff like that, might be a bigger concern since we might have to store water that you might not want to have to use it for. And canned foods has all the water there, but one way or another, you're storing the water. You know, canned foods, you're storing it; it's just already in the food. Um, so one way or another, you have to have the water anyway. Jim Ketchum says, "Lucky to be in Maine. Got a spring a mile away. Might freeze to death though. Yeah, very. You see, I don't want. I'd rather deal with the desert than have to freeze my ass." I would recommend, Mr. Landfill says, I would recommend chili, corned beef, and canned meat. So that's exactly, if you guys were listening about 15, 20 minutes ago, that is exactly what I did recommend. Progresso soup says hardworking American and have eaten it 3 years past the end date. Yeah, that soups will last fine. I don't like the soups because they are very expensive for the calories that you get out of it compared to you put the price of a can of soup versus a can of stag chili. Um, you're going to be paying more for the soup usually to get like half or a third of the calories in many situations. And it's kind of hard to find soups that don't have corn syrup and textured vegetable protein and seed oils and all this other garbage that I don't personally want in my food. If you don't care about that, you can get the cheaper soups and it's not as bad. But if you're going to be getting like the good kind of, or not even organic, but you know, like the real non-GMO, non all loaded with crap soups, you're going to be paying a lot more, and it's way cheaper to get like stag chili, which doesn't have that shit in it either, and has more calories, takes up less space, that sort of thing. But I do keep a couple cans of soup around because I think what they would be good for is if you could take it, use it to bolster, kind of like a bouillon almost, to bolster your rice. Like if you take a can of chicken noodle soup or minestrone or whatever, something like that, and take 3 or 4 cans of that and mix it in with like an enormous quantity of rice, maybe not all at once, but you know what I mean. You could turn a can of soup and a big bag of rice into like a humongous meal, and it would make the rice, it would be a little more like watered down kind of than the soup itself, but you'd get kind of like a broth and some seasonings and all that for the rice that would make it a lot more palatable for most people. I don't personally have an issue eating just a huge pile of white rice. That's just how I eat my rice anyway, so it's not as big a concern for me. But if you're one of those people who like white rice is like a chore, definitely get chilies and soups and stuff to mix it in, and that helps out a lot. Dollar for dollar, cal for cal, I found of all things Chef Boyardee to be at the top. Yeah, the cheap stuff like that is definitely hard to beat calorie per dollar. I just don't like the ingredient list. If you don't care about seed oils, corn syrup, and TVP, which is just another form of soy, which they use to replace meat to get protein levels up, then by all means get the cheap stuff, and you're definitely, it's going to be hard to beat because Chef Boyardee tastes good. To me, that's what MREs taste like. It's just the pasta ones taste like Chef Boyardee. Very consistent, good for like kids and stuff like that because they're familiar with the taste, they like it, lasts forever. Crack it open, eat it. You don't have to do anything with it other than warm it up. Nothing wrong with those. I just try to avoid them because I don't like the ingredients. But if you're not worried about those ingredients, or you're only going to eat it if it's a disaster anyway, so you don't mind storing it, you just want to do it cheaply, the Chef Boyardee stuff is fantastic. And even you can get the generic, you know, store brand same stuff, and it'll be even cheaper. Where do I find stag chili? They have it at Walmart. They have it at walmart.com. They have it on Amazon if you can't find it there. You can literally get it delivered to your front door on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description after this video is over to where you can get the stag chili. Usually going to be cheaper on Walmart, I think, but not by a huge margin. So it depends on what is a better shipping scenario, whether you're Prime or whether Walmart's going to ship free to you, or you can pick it up in store. It's also with Albertsons and the other stores here, but it is more expensive there than at Walmart or Amazon. So yeah, I'm sure Costco has it. You just got to look where the chilies are, and most of these major chain stores seem to have it. Mad Hatter says, I told my work buddy to watch your channel. He said you were full of it. You talking to me? Okay. You didn't have to watch. No, Chef Boyardee is not high calorie. High calories is peanut butter, 2,500 calories per pound versus 300 per pound. Well, he's talking about per dollar, not necessarily per pound. Um, Peanut butter is not cheap usually. the cheap stuff is cheaper, but I would when it comes to pure calories per dollar, rice is like pretty much the benchmark, very hard to beat. And peanut butter doesn't last quite as well as canned goods, or not nearly as well as canned goods because of the oils and everything. But Mad Hatter. Coconut oil is 39 calories per pound max. Mix it with 600 calories. Can yeah, coconut oil is tons of calories, but also it can go rancid. You can't put coconut oil on your shelf for 10, 15 years. It's fantastic though. I definitely recommend having coconut oil. And it's way better than canola oil or soybean oil or the so-called vegetable oils. Fantastic. And it can also be used for a lot of other things like skin balm. It has a small amount of SPF sun protection. So you get all oiled up and you're like have an SPF of 5 as you glisten in the sun like Van Damme. Um, but it doesn't have a particularly long shelf life. And then rancid oils can actually be pretty bad for you. Yeah, good chili with meat sauce never gets old, for sure, for sure. I have a bunch of My Patriot Supply, which is also called Ready Hours. It's good quality survival food. It's better. It's certainly better than Four Patriots in my mind. Like I said, when it comes down to it, for me, as long as they're storing it properly, which even in I'm assuming in most cases, even companies like Four Patriots are probably going to get a decent shelf life out of it. It's not that hard to do that part of it well. So it comes down to ingredients and taste. So the Four Patriots for me fails on ingredients alone. I've never eaten it. I seriously doubt it would taste good. Same with the Walmart brand stuff. Um, when it comes to My Patriot Supply, I haven't looked into their ingredients and I also have not tried it. So if their ingredients are okay with you, then you just got to try it. And if it's not gross, then if you don't mind the ingredients and it's not gross to you, then who am I to tell you that it's not the perfect survival food for you? Mad Hatter says, I've been following for about 10 years and nothing you said has come true. So, oh, okay. So I guess you haven't checked the silver price recently or missed the beginning of this when I was talking about that. But if you've been following me for 10 years and you don't think anything I've said is true, why then you're the dumb one. Why are you wasting your time? There's plenty of other YouTube channels out there, people lighting their farts and whatnot. Um, I think Sydney Sweeney's even got a big movie coming out or a new movie. You could go look at some big naturals and you're here watching my channel and you don't even think I get anything right. What's the point? Rule the Wasteland says living here in the South with all the storms we get, when one big one hits, people eat whatever to survive for sure. SU says keep the PF frozen until SHTF. The peanut butter. Is that what you're saying? PF? Then it will last 1 year unfrozen much sooner. True. You can do that with a lot of like butter and things too. Keep it frozen. Um, maybe even the oils. I haven't thought about freezing like fats. I don't see any reason why that wouldn't work. A can of good chili over a pile of white rice is yummy face. Exactly. And it bolsters it tremendously. You could take a $2.88 can of stag chili and like $1 worth of rice, and you're having like an insane amount of calories. Definitely a whole day's worth. Sun has set here on the West Coast. Fireworks? No, if there are any fireworks, it wouldn't be until Tuesday or Wednesday. I don't think anything happens Monday unless the Russians try to head off whatever is going on. I have made beef tallow 5 years ago, still good. Awesome. Mountain House is I have had. They are good. Remember they taste good. Most of their ingredients, anything that's just literally freeze dried is usually good ingredients because you don't have to add preservatives or even waste money on additional oils and things like that. So most of the time, freeze dried is literally just whatever it is. If it's egg, it's just egg. If it's been freeze dried and sealed. If it's bacon or meat, it's just the meat freeze dried. So the ingredients are usually super pure. Mountain House does taste good, seems high quality. It's just like all other freeze dried stuff. It's very expensive. You're gonna be paying these days 12 to 15 bucks per meal for the same amount of calories that you would get from a $2.80 can of stag chili. So it's much more lightweight. It'll last even longer, probably, than most canned goods in a realistic sense. In terms of cans can get like dented or rusted or they're heavy. So it's really hard to beat decent quality freeze dried food like that. It's just expensive. That is the downside. Your calorie intake and extended SHTF will go up. You'll be burning more calories. Everything gets 10x harder? Probably. But like I said, I don't try to plan for any specific event. And there's a lot of scenarios where we're simply dealing with, like some kind of lockdown or some sort of supply chain disruption that isn't a true what we think of as like massive SHTF. It's just we don't have any food. You might be sitting in your place in the dark, being twiddling your thumbs, just waiting for the power to come back on and be able to go to the grocery store, not burning any calories, you know? And then there's other scenarios where you have to fight off some, crazy people trying to rob you, chop firewood, push vehicles out of the way, build, cut big trench, whatever. And so you might be spending twice what you normally spend on calories. So obviously more is always better. I just try to use a 2,000 calorie a day estimate, because even in a pretty heinous scenarios, that's going to at least keep you from dangerously losing weight for most people. Obviously, if you're gigantic, 6'4", 260 pounds, don't go off 2,000. That's not going to be enough. Have some August's 10-ounce freeze-dried stuff. Yeah, their stuff seems consistent, but again, it's not very good, and it has a lot of ingredients in it that I don't like. For the dehydrated stuff, if it's freeze-dried, it probably is just the ingredient, in which case I'm sure it's fine. But I would try it. I would at least try it. Eric, have you talked to Shay? Not in a while. I need to get back in touch with him. No particular reason, but I need to have him and Dan back on here. And so much has happened. So much stuff has happened since we've last had any sort of Prepper Trifecta type hangout. So I definitely need to shoot them an email, see if I can get them back on. Hardworking American says, I will defend my neighbor's old horse from the zombies. Cool. At least don't let the zombies get it. If the old horse is going to go, at least get some calories from a giant horse. So did we get anybody? I didn't see the comments, but I want to see what you guys think is going to happen on this meeting on Tuesday with Hegseth and the all the generals. Did anyone post? So that's before I get out of here, post in there what your comments are going, or what your you think this meeting's going to be. And let me see. I'll get the prizes for the Patreon. I haven't showed them off yet. So go ahead and post what you think is going to happen on Tuesday. It can be nothing. It can be whatever. And then for the first live stream, so next week's, we're going to choose a winner out of the paid Patreon people for our Front Towards Enemy plushie Claymore. So you can see what he looks like up here. I got one of my own. And we're also going to be giving away this mossy oak, pretty cool knife with a nice tactical sheath. And this is a solid beast. Pretty heavy, but it has a nice thick chunk of metal, full tang, and it's very ergonomic. So I think this would be good for all sorts of like survival things, purposes, as well as, need to in any sort of tactical scenario. So that's pretty cool. They're going to make plans for Venezuela. Very possible, but why would they need to do that in person? I think some combination of Jim and Mr. Landfill here saying bye woke brass / it will be a nothing burger, like just a photo op. I think the administration is certainly capable of doing something just bombastic and showy just for the hell of it. They've done stuff like that before. I posted above about Hegseth. Oh, let me see if I can find it. So hard to get through the comments. Well, you'll have to post it again. I can't find it. Sorry. Extra 4 high says probably something about them cracking down on the domestic enemies. Yeah, that's definitely possible. I think if that is the case, we won't hear about it. They will just say it really was a pep rally. They're not going to say, by the way, we're going to be arresting all sorts of former and current politicians, military people, and law enforcement kind of thing. No one will nuke the generals. Exactly. I think that's kind of a goofy kind of thing. Like, oh, we can't put all the generals in one place because someone's going to blow them up. Like, how? How is someone going to blow them up? I imagine there's at least some level of air defense over Quantico, first of all. For a terrorist cell to break onto the nuclear base and take out, or law enforcement at least, FBI base, and take out 800 military personnel would require quite an operation that they would have 5 days to plan. And like I said, sending an intercontinental ballistic missile would be, they don't need to take out the generals to do it. They could just take out Washington, D.C. anyway at any point, and we would have like 15 to 30 minutes notice. Even if they used a hypersonic missile, like a Reznik or something, we would have a few minutes and we would know exactly where it came from. And it's the equivalent of just instantly starting a nuclear war. And I don't think it would be that dramatic of a decapitation level event to take out a bunch of generals. Like the amount of generals that we actually used and needed in real major wars that we've had in the past, like World War One and Two, was not nearly as many as was it? Am I crazy? Did we have 800 generals in World War Two? I seriously doubt it. Everything has been bureaucratic bloat. Um, let's see if I. All right, maybe I'm full of shit. It says during World War II, the U.S. military had over 2,000 flag officers, generals, and admirals, but that was also during an active World War where there was active, combat happening all over the place. And I still think that like we've seen this happen. I don't think decapitation strikes in terms of leadership are really that effective when they're not the leadership who determine policy. When you have a military the size of the United States or Russia or China or even Iran, taking out a few or even a lot of their officers doesn't change most of the effectiveness of the military, doesn't change most of the policy. Sometimes, in the case of like the United States, we have very singular figures like the president, who taking them out might drastically change foreign and domestic policy, but taking out generals doesn't, unless, they're overly influential. But so I don't think even like taking out half the generals or something would really have that dramatic of an effect on the ability of the US to like fight back in the event of it being done by Russia or China or something like that. But maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. It just seems like a super high risk. You're basically nuking US. Yeah, most of our generals have half a foot in Raytheon, Northrop, Door anyway, or yeah, or in politics, whatever. Yeah, and especially with the current administration, I would venture to say that a good 25 to 30% of the generals are actively working against, at least in attitude and beliefs, against the current administration anyway. You know what I mean? Like it would have probably, just like a lot of these corporations and government institutions and everything, that there's a lot of people in there who not only are they not being particularly productive, they're being anti-productive, and actually getting rid of them would improve and streamline the efficiency and effectiveness of these organizations. And I have no doubt that the military is like that too. I mean, we've got guys showing up like retiring and then putting on like freaking gay dog costumes and, like I said, doing actively treasonous things against the chain of command by talking to foreign powers behind their back, making their own decisions about what the foreign policy should be and what the military decisions should be. Disastrous, absolutely unacceptable. Posting on like and if half these generals and admirals are probably fat old women anyway, from what I can tell. Absolute disgrace. Douglas, what did Douglas say? It would SU says adult male needs 3,000 calories per day just to lay in a tunnel and not lose weight. That's absolutely not true. Um, if you look up your basic metabolic rate, you can type it in. It's not 3,000. Now it's going to be like 1,800 calories for most adult men who are not um, either incredibly active or incredibly large. Now, if you want to say stress adds a little bit more, sure, bump it up to 2,000, 2,100, but it's nowhere near 3,000 for just a basic metabolic rate. CLM says it would be incredibly base if he pulled the Saddam move when he took power and just started calling out general names who are escorted out, never to be heard from again. I know that's what I'm hoping for. He's like, everyone who is still a general, stand up, and he's like, not you, you, or you, like in that South Park episode. Everyone whose parents are alive, stand up, not you, Timmy. If some country was going to nuke, why not Washington? Yeah, I mean, I guess the idea would be that it would be very impactful to kill all these generals at once. But like I said, I don't think it would be as impactful as just killing the president or nuking, some Congress or something at any other given point. When they're just taking out the entire political structure, I think is more has more, I think the entire political structure has more control over how the military is used than the generals do. And I don't think the generals specifically would have that much of an impact on how effective the military is. Um, you know what I mean? Like I said, they're half of, or good 20% of them are like fat old lesbians anyway. Haven't been able to probably ever do a pull-up and are probably actively working against the administration to the best of their ability. Hey, Lord Humongous, any word on your sweet hoodies? Fuck! I will check that out. Sorry, I forgot. I will do that. Hoodies. Thank you for reminding me. I will check into it, but not so no, not yet, unfortunately. I'm sorry. Most of our generals have half of, oh, I already read that. City prepper, if you know, you know. In reference to what? Gay dog. The only thing I've never skinned is a gator. Yeah, gators are get some good eating in the tail. I've had a lot of gators. I'm just imagining laying in a tunnel, hammering Cinnabons and maintaining weight. Yeah, you got to be in bulk mode to lay in a tunnel. Never been that hungry yet. City prepper is based. Cool. What I can tell, he is politically significantly to the left of where I am, but doesn't make a big, issue about politics specifically. But as a prepper, he seems legit. I've been subbed him for a while. I don't watch all his videos. Um, I've had it not that good. Talking about Gator, I thought Gator was good. Ew, are we still talking about Gator? All right. Gonna look into the hoodies. What do you guys, as we heard what people think, most people seem to think it's probably a nothing burger, potentially a domestic issue, which is basically what I said. So we'll have a lot, either way, we'll have something to talk about on next week's live stream where we know for sure. And I appreciate you guys watching, and hopefully I'll be able to make some more other videos soon too. I was trying to get a better setup for doing like interviews and stuff, but that different webcam did not look like it wanted to work. It was freezing up every time I had to refocus. So we'll see. But I will talk to you guys soon. Thanks for watching. I don't know. I'm just assuming that. I may be talking out my ass when it comes to City Prepper. I thought I'd seen some things over the years that he was, and I don't mean to the left like country as a whole sense, but for the what I would consider for the prepping community kind of thing. So probably more like a lot. But like I said, don't take that as anything. We take that with a grain of salt because I am just going on memory. I could be thinking of someone completely different. But either way, he's got a good prepping channel for sure. So don't let that detract from that, even if that is true.